Usually, when we talk about a long-term plan, especially like a financial one, there's this expectation of architectural precision.
Oh, yeah, like building a bridge or something.
Exactly. It's like building a suspension bridge.
Mm-hmm.
You lay the foundation, you you calculate the load-bearing stress of the steel, you follow the blueprint, and the engineer just points at the schematic and says, there it is. That's how we cross the river.
Right, because it's structural, it's math. I mean, the tensile strength of steel doesn't just, change based on its mood that day.
No, the blueprint doesn't wake up halfway across the river and decide, actually, I think I'd rather be a tunnel.
Yeah, that'd be disastrous.
Right. But then, you step out of the realm of pure engineering and into the realm of human psychology, and suddenly that pristine blueprint is, well, it's basically drawn on an etch sketch.
That is a terrifying image for a financial planner.
It is, because the math of compound interest or retirement planning stays exactly the same, but the person doing the math is completely mutating.
Constantly mutating, yeah.
Which brings us to the core of today's deep dive into our source material. We're looking at a concept that's simply titled 14, You'll Change.
Such a simple title for such a massive problem.
Right. So for everyone listening, welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today, what we're really going to examine, is why your future self is practically guaranteed to betray your current financial plan. And more importantly, how you can build a life that survives your own inevitable evolution.
And that is, it's the ultimate hidden risk in any long-term strategy.
Oh, completely. Okay, let's unpack this. Because this isn't just about, adjusting your portfolio from tech stocks to municipal bonds.
No, it goes way deeper than that.
Right. It's about the fundamental psychology of identity. And
Yeah.
the materials we're looking at ground this not in a spreadsheet, but in a really visceral human story.
Yeah, the story of the doctor.
Yes. So it's about a guy who started with absolutely no privilege, 0 head starts. He didn't even have that, effortless photographic memory intellect, right? He just had raw, unadulterated grit.
Which is a crucial starting point to understand. Because, people who have to grind for every single inch of ground they gain, they tend to have a very unfiltered, highly friction-aware understanding of what it takes to succeed.
Yeah. They aren't insulated from the physical and emotional cost of ambition.
Exactly. They know the price.
They don't get, helicopter to the summit. They hike it barefoot. And this particular person, as a teenager, had one singular obsessive life mission. He wanted to be a doctor.
And given his socioeconomic starting line, no reasonable statistician would have bet on him.
Never. It was a totally irrational dream. But he put his head down, bulldozed his way through the obstacles, and eventually gets into medical school.
Mm-hmm.
And he does it a full decade older than all of his classmates.
Which is, that's just a whole other level of pressure.
Right. He's in his late 20s or early 30s, surrounded by 22-year-olds, and he just outworks every single one of them. He scales the mountain. He gets the MD.
It's the archetypal underdog victory. He achieved one of the most culturally revered, highly compensated professions in society, entirely against the odds.
Yeah.
And the psychological momentum required to sustain that kind of delayed gratification for, over a decade? It's staggering.
You expect this immense wave of fulfillment, like he achieved his absolute wildest teenage dream. So roughly 15 years after those grueling medical school days, an old friend calls him up.
And you think this is going to be a victory lap?
Exactly. The expectation is a conversation filled with the satisfaction of a life well-earned. Life is great, the practice is booming, the hard work paid off. Instead, when asked how things are going, the doctor immediately cuts his friend off and says, awful career.
Just like that, awful career. The blunt force of that statement completely shatters the expected narrative.
Yeah, the friend tries to laugh it off, thinking, oh, it's a joke about a long shift, right? The doctor doubles down. Awful career, man. And then he proceeds to vent for 10 straight minutes.
Wow, 10 minutes of just unloading.
Just unloading. The punishing hours, the administrative nightmare of the medical system, the chronic stress, it had completely hollowed him out. And the observation made in the source material is really devastating.
What's fascinating here is that this man was just as intensely disappointed in where he was today as he had been relentlessly driven toward getting there 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's like the fire that propelled him up the mountain is the exact same fire that is now burning him to ash at the summit.
It's a complete inversion of his psychological state.
It's like spending decades of blood, sweat, and tears training to climb Mount Everest, right? Mm-hmm. You alienate your family because you're always training. You spend your life savings on gear. You lose toes to frostbite. Well, hopefully not, but you know what I mean.
But suffer for it.
Right. And you finally reach the peak, the oxygen is thin, you plant your flag, look around, and suddenly realize, you know what? I actually hate the cold. I think I just want to sit on a warm beach.
That analogy perfectly highlights the absurdity of our internal compass. Because what we are looking at is a fundamental failure in what behavioral economists call effective forecasting.
Effective forecasting. Okay, break that down for us.
So, imagining a goal is neurologically easy and highly rewarding. When that teenager imagined being a doctor, his brain was simulating the prestige, the respect, the intellectual triumph, and, the financial security. He was essentially running a highlight reel.
He was watching the movie trailer of being a doctor.
Exactly. The movie trailer.
But I have to push back a little here just to play devil's advocate. Is this just a uniquely high-stress job issue? I mean, medicine is notoriously brutal. Maybe he just picked a particularly toxic industry, and this isn't like a universal human flaw.
It's a fair question, and the severity might certainly be amplified by the medical field. But the underlying mechanism is entirely universal.
Really? Even outside of medicine?
Oh, absolutely. Because imagining a goal in the context of the realistic, granular life stresses that grow alongside it is nearly impossible for the human brain to do accurately. You cannot neurologically simulate the cumulative exhaustion of a decade of 36-hour on-call shifts when you're 18 and just dreaming about wearing the white coat.
Because you haven't lived it yet.
Right. You literally do not possess the experiential framework to contextualize it. Your brain only simulates the peak of the mountain. It absolutely refuses to simulate the mechanics of frostbite.
Wow. So the doctor didn't actually fail at his goal. He succeeded magnificently at the goal set by an 18-year-old.
Right.
But he failed as a forecaster of his 35-year-old self. He just assumed his teenage desires would perfectly map onto a middle-aged man's reality.
Exactly. And that underpins a massive area of vulnerability in how we structure our lives. We are notoriously, shockingly poor forecasters of what our future selves will actually value.
Which takes this far beyond the medical field. I mean, if we can't accurately predict what will bring us meaning or satisfaction a decade from now, how on earth do we decide what to save for, what to invest in, or what career to anchor our entire financial foundation to?
You end up building a highly rigid financial house on a shifting psychological fault line.
A shifting fault line. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. To see how universal this is, we can look at the life cycle of shifting ambitions that the source material outlines. It's a trajectory that affects almost everyone. Let's call it the tractor to retirement pipeline.
The tractor to retirement pipeline, I love that.
So if we trace the evolution of ambition, it starts around age 5. What does the 5-year-old want to do? Drive a tractor. Big, noisy machinery. Vroom, vroom, beep, beep.
Right, because it's purely visceral. At that stage of cognitive development, ambition is entirely tied to immediate sensory engagement and physical scale.
Big wheels, loud engine. Perfect. But then you mature into a teenager. The sensory appeal of a tractor fades, and you start craving status, respect, maybe financial upside.
The social hierarchy starts to matter.
Exactly. So the teenager decides, I'm going to be a lawyer. And the critical point here is the certainty. The teenager doesn't think this is a temporary phase. They believe their life plan is permanently locked in. They are ready to take on massive student debt for law school.
They have achieved total certainty based on the highly constrained, socially influenced worldview of a teenager, which is honestly kind of wild when you think about it.
It is wild. So fast forward a decade, the teenager is now an adult lawyer. The reality of the choice manifests. And it's not just courtroom dramatics and sharp suits.
No, it's grueling, billable hours.
Endless document review.
Yeah.
And the sudden realization that they never see their family. The prestige suddenly doesn't outweigh the absence.
But what do?
They pivot. They abandon the partnership track and take a lower-paying, lower-stress job with flexible hours. They just want their life back.
And notice the shift in values there. Status and income have been demoted. Autonomy and time have been promoted.
Right. But then a new variable enters the equation. Children.
Always a game changer.
Total game changer. They realize that the cost of childcare is so astronomically high that it's consuming their entire newly reduced paycheck. The math just doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah, paying to go to work.
Exactly. So they reevaluate their entire life's purpose and opt to leave the workforce completely to become a stay-at-home parent. And once again, they conclude, this is finally the right choice. This is who I really am.
Here's where it gets really interesting. At every single one of these inflection points, the teenager choosing law, the lawyer choosing to step down, the parent choosing to stay home, there is an illusion of finality.
We never say, this is what I want for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
We say, I have finally figured out who I am.
Yes. We treat every new phase like it's the ultimate destination.
Until we reach the final acts, they hit age 70. And the realization washes over them that a lifetime of staying home, of rightfully prioritizing family over a relentless career advancement and compound interest, means they are completely unprepared to afford a comfortable retirement.
It is a profound illustration of compounding consequences. And the thing is, you cannot say the person made the wrong moral or personal choices.
No, not at all.
Being present for your children is a deeply held, valid value, but the 70-year-old is now bearing the harsh financial consequences of a decision made by a 30-something who is reacting to the burnout of a 20-something who was fulfilling the naive dream of a teenager.
Wow. It's like a relay race where every runner takes the baton and sprints in a completely different direction.
That's exactly what it is.
But to ground this in some hard reality, let's look at the statistics the source material brings in. Because it's easy to think this is just a hypothetical thought experiment.
Oh, the numbers are jarring.
They really are.
Yeah.
According to Federal Reserve data, only 27% of college graduates have a job related to their major.
Just 27%. That is an astonishing inefficiency if we view it purely logically.
Think about the systemic implication of that. We ask 18-year-olds whose prefrontal cortexes aren't even fully developed to take out tens of thousands of dollars in non-dischargeable debt to study a highly specific field.
And nearly 3/4 of them end up doing something completely different.
It's crazy. Furthermore, the data shows that 29% of stay-at-home parents have a college degree. People who spent 4 years and a small fortune preparing for a professional career, who then fundamentally re-evaluated their existence once a child entered the picture.
The lesson to synthesize here isn't that higher education is a mistake or that people regret going to college. That's not the point.
Right.
The core takeaway is that a new parent in their 30s processes the world, assesses risk, and derives meaning in a completely alien way compared to their 18-year-old self.
An alien way, yeah.
The 18-year-old literally lacks the emotional and experiential vocabulary to even conceptualize the 30-something's worldview. It's not a mere change of preference, it is a fundamental change of identity.
And it requires a massive blow to the ego to admit this, I think. It is one thing to look at the economy and say, well, I don't know what the stock market will do in 10 years.
That's easy to admit.
Right. It's an entirely different, much more terrifying thing to say, I don't know what I will want in 10 years. We cling desperately to the illusion of self-knowledge.
We do. We hold on to it like a life raft. And that desperate clinging makes enduring long-term decisions incredibly fraught.
So if we accept this pattern, this constant decade-by-decade shifting of the goalposts that we inflict upon ourselves, we have to ask why.
The root cause.
Yeah. If we are constantly changing our minds, why do we wake up every single morning convinced that we finally locked in our permanent final identity? What is the, biological or psychological mechanism driving this blindness?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this brings us to a foundational concept in behavioral psychology, heavily emphasized in our sources. It was coined by the Harvard psychologist Daniel Gilbert.
Oh,
He calls it the end of history illusion.
The end of history illusion. I love that name.
It's perfect, isn't it? Gilbert identifies a deeply ingrained asymmetry in how human beings perceive time and personal development. We're actually quite proficient at recognizing how much we've changed in the past.
Oh, totally.
Right. If you look back at yourself 5, 10, or 20 years ago, you likely recognize that your tastes, your emotional maturity, and your core priorities were drastically different.
Oh, without question. If I look at what I thought was profoundly important to argue about a decade ago, or, the things I spent money on, I view that past version of myself with a mix of amusement and horror.
Exactly. Amusement and horror, that's universal.
I am clearly not that person anymore.
So we easily acknowledge our historical evolution, but the illusion, the cognitive blind spot, is that we wildly, systematically underestimate how much our personalities, desires, and goals will change in the future.
We act like today, right now, is the ultimate finish line of our personal development.
Precisely. We acknowledge the chiseling that happened to the marble in the past, but we assume the sculptor has permanently put down the tools today. Gilbert summarizes it by saying that all of us walk around with an illusion that our personal history has just come to an end, that we have just recently, finally, become the people we were always meant to be, and will remain this way for the rest of our lives.
Let's look at the real-world evidence of this that Gilbert points out, because it spans every aspect of human life. First, you have young people paying thousands of dollars to endure painful laser treatments to remove tattoos that they paid good money to get as teenagers.
A literal physical manifestation of changing value.
Right. The teenager thought a barbed wire bicep band was a permanent reflection of their soul. The 28-year-old views it as a costly, embarrassing mistake.
It was permanent to the teenager.
Then you have middle-aged people rushing to divorce partners who they rush to marry as young adults. The 22-year-old thought they had found the permanent missing piece to their puzzle. The 45-year-old realizes they are now playing an entirely different game.
Another massive shift.
And then you have older adults working incredibly hard to lose the weight and shed the material accumulation that middle-aged adults work so hard to gain.
The paradox of aging.
Seriously. In your 40s, you work tirelessly to amass wealth, a massive house of physical footprint. In your 70s, you are frantically downsizing, trying to lose the literal and figurative weight of all that accumulation.
It is an endless, exhausting cycle of our future selves repenting for the absolute certainty of our past selves.
Repenting for certainty, that's a great phrase.
And the most striking aspect of Gilbert's research is the persistence of this blind spot. His data indicates that this phenomenon occurs across the entire human lifespan.
Wait, it doesn't get better as you get older.
No. From age 18 all the way to 68, people consistently fail to predict their future evolution. A 68-year-old is just as fiercely convinced that they are a finished product as an 18-year-old is. We simply never learn the lesson.
That is wild. Which makes me wonder about the evolutionary why. Why would the human brain evolve such a massive, persistent blind spot? If it constantly leads to regret and wasted resources, shouldn't evolution have bred that out of us?
It's a fantastic question. And evolutionary psychologists would argue that this illusion is actually a critical survival mechanism.
Really? How?
Think about early human history. If our ancestors possess a crystal clear awareness that their desires, allegiances, and values were going to radically change every few years, they would suffer from crippling existential dread and decision paralysis.
Oh, I see. They never commit to anything.
Exactly. Why commit to a mate? Why commit to a tribe? Why commit to a multi-year strategy for hunting or agriculture if you know you won't care about it a decade later?
You just sit there.
Right. The brain manufactures a false sense of permanence, this end of history illusion, to encourage action, commitment, and social bonding in the present. It tricks you into believing your current state is eternal so that you will actually do the hard work required to survive today.
So the illusion is great for short-term survival and group cohesion.
Very effective for that.
But the problem arises when we take this ancient neurological trick and drop it into a modern capitalist society that demands 40-year financial plans.
Precisely. The biological mechanism that helped us commit to a tribe now causes massive friction when we collide with the ultimate stakes of long-term financial survival.
So what does this all mean? Let's explore that friction. Because this is where the psychological quirk stops being an interesting cocktail party fact and becomes a serious hazard to your wealth.
This is where it gets expensive.
Very expensive. The source material brings in Charlie Munger to illustrate this. Munger has a fundamental golden rule of compounding. Never interrupted unnecessarily.
It is the bedrock principle of wealth accumulation.
Yep.
The mathematics of compound interest are exponential, but the formula requires one incredibly fragile ingredient: unbroken, uninterrupted time. Decades of it.
Decades of just leaving things alone.
Right.
And to prove this, we look at the ultimate success outliers in the financial world. People like Ronald Reed, the famous janitor who quietly bought blue chip stocks, never sold them, and died with millions. Or Warren Buffett. Why did they succeed on such a massive, incomprehensible scale?
Because they kept doing the exact same thing for 50, 60, 70 years. They let compounding run wild.
Which requires a freakish, almost inhuman level of psychological consistency.
It really does. It's not normal human behavior.
But isn't adapting a good thing? I mean, we just spent the first half of this deep dive establishing that changing your mind when your circumstances change, like the lawyer quitting to see their kids, is healthy.
It is deeply healthy for your emotional well-being and personal growth, but it is catastrophic for compounding.
Catastrophic.
Yes, this is the paradox. Compounding demands decades of unwavering, boring consistency. But human psychology, driven by adaptation and the end of history illusion, guarantees that we will evolve so much over a lifetime that we will naturally find that consistency unbearable.
We get bored.
Exactly. We are neurologically wired to crave novelty and respond to changing environments. We are fundamentally allergic to the static behavior that compound interest requires.
It's like planting an oak tree because you want massive shade in your backyard for your retirement. You plant the acorn, you water it, but because of human nature, 5 years later, you look at the sapling and your tastes have evolved.
You want something else.
Right, you say, I'm not really an oak person anymore. I'm getting into cider. I want an apple tree. So you uproot the oak, throw it away, and plant an apple seed. 5 years after that, you discover a passion for woodworking, so you rip out the apple tree to plant mahogany.
And 50 years later, you are standing in a backyard full of freshly dug dirt. You have no shade, you have no apples, and you have no mahogany. You have constantly reset the clock on the growth to zero.
You interrupted the compounding unnecessarily.
Yes.
But to you, in the moment, it felt entirely necessary because your identity had fundamentally changed.
The materials frame this beautifully by breaking down the human lifespan. We don't really live one seamless 80-year life of consistent goals. That's a myth.
It totally is.
In reality, our money, our investments, and our careers have to somehow survive roughly 4 distinct, completely different 20-year blocks of evolving personalities.
Wait, 4 distinct 20-year blocks. Break that down.
Sure. So from age 0 to 20, you are a dependent, absorbing information and navigating basic development. From 20 to 40, you are often the ambitious climber, the young parent, the risk taker, heavily focused on acquisition and establishing identity.
Building the foundation.
Right. Then, from 40 to 60, your values often shift towards stability. You are dealing with aging parents, perhaps confronting your own physical limitations and reassessing your legacy.
The reality check years.
Exactly. And from 60 to 80, you are navigating health challenges, managing fixed incomes, and prioritizing comfort in deeply meaningful relationships. These are practically 4 entirely different human beings occupying the same physical body across time.
So my 20-year-old self is basically an entirely different entity than my 60-year-old self. And yet, the financial plan I start at 20 has to somehow serve the 60-year-old without the 40-year-old sabotaging it in the middle.
That is the ultimate challenge. The middle versions of yourself will constantly be tempted to liquidate the assets, change the career, or blow up the plan to serve their immediate evolved desires, completely ignoring the needs of the final version of you.
Man, if compounding demands a static identity, and we've firmly established our identity is relentlessly fluid, what's the actual mechanism for resolving that friction without just giving up? How do we plan for a stranger?
It requires a whole new framework.
Which brings us to the actionable survival strategies outlined in the text. Strategy number 1 is all about avoiding the trap of extremes and utilizing the highly strategic power of balance.
Balance is a word that often gets dismissed, I think.
Yeah, it sounds boring.
Right, it sounds like a compromise. It sounds uninspired. But the framework here redefines balance not as a lack of ambition, but as a vital, calculated survival mechanism against your own changing mind.
Let's look at the 2 opposing life paths the author uses to demonstrate this. 2 extreme approaches to living. On one side, you have young people who purposefully choose highly austere, minimalist lives. They earn very little, they spend almost nothing, they opt completely out of the corporate rat race.
And the crucial point is, they're perfectly happy with this choice right now.
Exactly, they love it.
They have achieved a state of equilibrium with their current values.
But on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have the grinders. The people working 80-hour weeks, putting their absolute all into climbing the corporate ladder to pay for a life of luxury. The sports cars, the massive mortgage, and they too are perfectly happy with that choice right now. The thrill of the hustle provides immense dopamine.
But both of these extreme paths share a hidden, highly dangerous assumption. They both assume that the person they are today will never, ever change.
Which we know is statistically and biologically false. So what happens when the illusion breaks? For the austere minimalist, the extreme risk is waking up at 45, realizing their values have shifted, and they actually do want to raise a family.
Or looking ahead to 70 and realizing they have zero safety net for medical care.
Right, their extreme lack of capital has trapped them in a past identity.
And the luxury chaser faces an equally devastating risk.
What's their risk?
They risk waking up at 50, looking at a massive bank account, but being hit with a tidal wave of regret. They realize they spent the healthiest, most physically capable years of their only life trapped in a stressful cubicle, ignoring their spouse and children, all to chase money they no longer have the energy or desire to spend.
Oof. I can hear people listening to this and saying, wait a minute, the entire personal finance industry, especially movements like FIRE, financial independence, retire early, is built entirely on extreme, aggressive saving and extreme lifestyle design. Are we saying those people are psychologically doomed?
It's a critical pushback, and it's important to be nuanced here. Extreme strategies like FIRE work mathematically, but they carry an incredibly high psychological fragility.
Psychological fragility.
Yes. To understand why extreme plans inevitably fail or cause suffering over time, we have to look at the psychological mechanism of adaptation, specifically the hedonic treadmill.
The idea that we get used to whatever our baseline is.
Precisely. Human beings are apex adapters. If you choose the austere path, you eventually adapt to the simplicity. The initial thrill of rebelling against capitalism fades. It just becomes your normal, somewhat restricted Tuesday.
The novelty wears off.
Right. And if you choose the luxury path, you adapt to the luxury. The thrill of the new sports car wears off in a few months. The dopamine hit of the promotion fades. So the benefits of the extreme choices, the thrill, the pride, they evaporate over time due to adaptation.
But, and this is the kicker, the downsides of those extremes do not evaporate.
Exactly. The benefits fade, but the downsides endure.
Because not having the money to pay for your child's medical care doesn't wear off.
No, it doesn't.
The absence of memories because you are always at the office doesn't wear off. The physical toll of chronic stress doesn't wear off. Those morph into painful, enduring regrets.
And when that regret hits, it triggers catastrophic financial behavior.
As the text points out, regrets are especially painful when you abandon a previous extreme plan and feel like you have to run in the other direction twice as fast to make up for lost time.
The whiplash effect.
Yeah, the whiplash. The burned-out executive who suddenly quits to open a poorly planned organic farm, blowing their life savings, or the 40-year-old minimalist who panics about retirement and starts day trading crypto on margin to catch up. The whiplash destroys everything.
Which is why the solution prescribed is balance. Not as a moral imperative, mind you, but as a risk mitigation strategy.
A survival tactic.
Exactly. The author outlines a very specific target. Aim for moderate annual savings, moderate free time, no more than a moderate commute, and at least moderate time with your family.
It sounds aggressively unsexy. Nobody makes a motivational poster that says, achieve moderation.
No, they don't.
But if you view it through the lens of endurance, the logic is airtight.
Because compounding works best when a plan is given decades to grow, the key isn't finding the perfect, highest-yielding asset. The key is simply staying in the game.
Staying in the game.
Right. Extreme choices practically guarantee burnout or regret, which forces you to quit the game. Balance is a shock absorber for your changing identity.
So if you maintain moderate savings, you aren't destitute if you suddenly decide you want a family at 35. If you maintain moderate free time, you won't wake up at 50 resenting your career for stealing your youth.
Exactly. Balance prevents the catastrophic regret that forces you to blow up your life. Balance equals endurance, and endurance allows compounding to do its quiet, massive work in the background. It is a defensive moat against your own future unpredictability.
It creates a life structure flexible enough to accommodate the stranger you will become in 20 years.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Okay, so balance is the defensive strategy. But let's be realistic here. Even with a balanced life, you are going to change your mind about some things.
It's inevitable.
You are going to find yourself halfway down a career path or a financial strategy and realize it's simply the wrong path for who you are today. How do we extract ourselves when the damage is already done?
This brings us to survival strategy number 2.
Detonating sunk costs.
Yes. This is perhaps the most psychologically painful advice to actually execute, but it is absolutely essential for long-term survival.
To illustrate this, the source shares an incredible anecdote from Jason Zweig. Zweig is a prominent investment columnist, and he worked closely with the legendary psychologist Daniel Kahneman on Kahneman's seminal book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Now, Kahneman is a Nobel laureate. He's one of the founding fathers of behavioral economics.
He essentially mapped out the flaws in human decision-making. If anyone knows how brains mess up, it's him.
Right, so Zweig is collaborating with this genius, and Zweig recounts a specific working habit of Kahneman's that absolutely baffled him. Zweig noted that Kahneman had this shocking ability to just detonate what they had just done.
And completely destroy it.
Yeah, they would work endlessly on a chapter. Hours, days, meticulously crafting every sentence, researching every data point, pouring immense cognitive energy into this draft. And then, the next morning, Kahneman would send Zweig a new version that was utterly transformed.
Unrecognizable from the work they had just completed.
Completely unrecognizable. Different intro, different conclusion, different evidence. He didn't just edit the chapter, he blew it up, and built a new one on the ashes.
And Zweig was astounded.
Of course he was. How can a human being just casually throw away days of excruciatingly hard work without a second thought? How do you just discard all that effort? So that's why he asks him, and Kahneman gives a four-word answer.
I have no sunk costs.
I have no sunk costs.
It is a psychological superpower disguised as a casual statement.
We're all familiar with the sunk cost fallacy when it comes to money, right? Holding on to a losing stock just because you bought it at a higher price and don't want to admit defeat. Or finishing a terrible movie because you already paid for the ticket.
Yeah, that's standard behavioral economics.
But applying the complete rejection of sunk costs to your own identity, your own life choices, that is a massive paradigm shift.
This raises an important question, though, because it goes against our deepest psychological programming. We desperately want to validate our past efforts.
Our ego needs it.
Exactly. If we spent 3 days writing a chapter, our ego demands that the chapter be used, even if it's flawed, to justify the time spent. We throw good time after bad, trying to honor the unrecoverable past.
But Kahneman didn't care about that.
No, he simply refused to let the past dictate the present. If the chapter was suboptimal today, the fact that it took 3 days to write was entirely irrelevant data. The only thing that mattered was making the best decision for the next iteration.
And when you apply this to the trajectory of a human life, the implications are staggering. The materials point this out vividly. Some of the most miserable workers are people who stay loyal to a career path solely because it's the field they picked when deciding on a college major at age 18.
It is the ultimate tragedy of the sunk cost.
You spend 4 years getting a degree, so you feel morally and intellectually obligated to spend the next 40 years doing the job, even if you realize you hate it by year 2. Because if you quit, you feel like you wasted those 4 years.
But when we view this through the lens of the end of history illusion, we realize the fundamental absurdity of that loyalty.
It is absurd.
The odds of an 18-year-old, someone whose brain hasn't finished developing, who has virtually no real-world experience, successfully picking a daily grind that will genuinely fulfill them when they are 55 years old, are practically zero.
It is statistically laughable to assume the 18-year-old gets it right.
And this leads to my favorite conceptual framing in the entire deep dive.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. The author says that letting past sunk costs dictate your current decisions is the equivalent of a stranger making major life decisions for you.
Yes. Your past self is, for all intents and purposes, a stranger to your current self.
Think about the gravity of that. Would you walk up to an 18-year-old stranger on the street today and let them dictate what you do for a living? Would you hand them your bank account and let them set your budget for the next 30 years? Of course not. That would be insane.
It would be financial suicide.
But that is exactly what you were doing when you refused to abandon a career, a relationship, or a financial plan just because that was the original plan. You are taking orders from a ghost. You are letting a stranger run your life.
Sunk costs make our future selves prisoners to our past selves. The trick, the ultimate execution of this strategy, is to ruthlessly accept the reality of change.
The text says these old plans should be abandoned without mercy rather than put on life support and dragged along.
Yes, detonate it. If a financial goal, a career path, or a lifestyle choice was made by a version of you that no longer exists, and it actively harms or constrains the version of you that exists today, kill it. Like Kahneman detonating a draft.
Because the friction of dragging the corpse of your old dream around is what exhausts you. The quicker you drop it, the quicker you clear the slate, the sooner you can plant the right tree for who you are today and get back to the actual mechanism of wealth and happiness.
Compounding. It requires a tremendous amount of humility to look at your life and admit I was wrong about what I would want. But it also offers a tremendous amount of freedom.
So much freedom.
Acknowledging that the external world changes, the stock market, interest rates, the job market is easy. Everyone accepts that. Admitting that you are the most volatile variable in your own plan is the real challenge.
But once you admit it, you give yourself permission to evolve. You stop beating yourself up for not wanting the things you desperately wanted a decade ago.
Exactly.
You build a life based on balance to absorb the shocks, and you develop the mental toughness to detonate the sunk costs when the balance isn't enough.
You transition from trying to predict the future to building a system that can survive the future.
Which brings us to the end of today's journey through these concepts. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought to mull over as you step back into your day. We've talked about the illusion of permanence, the danger of extremes, and the concept of your past self being a stranger.
A shift in perspective that requires ongoing maintenance.
It does. So here is the question for you. If the person you are right now is just a temporary custodian of your life's timeline, what is one sunk cost? Maybe it's a career path you're miserable in, a rigid financial habit that causes you anxiety, or a long-term goal you don't even care about anymore. What is one sunk cost that you are currently dragging along on life support, simply to appease the ghost of who you were 5 years ago?
That's a powerful question.
Identify the ghost, and you might just free your future. We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into these sources. We wish you well as you navigate the constantly changing, beautifully unpredictable landscape of your own evolution. Until next time.